Greetings YouTube, this is Sixus. This time I'm doing a deck profile of my Crystron deck. I still have no clue when I'm going to get Needle Fiber, so I decided to go ahead and do this one. Anyway, so, starting off, we got 3 copies of Crystron Sylphifneel. Sylphifneel is a level 5 water machine. All of them are water machine. And this card, while it's in your graveyard or hand, you have the ability to discard a Crystron except for another copy of itself and special summon it in defense position. But when you do that, you have to destroy one card you control. And even if you destroy it itself, that works out because when this card is destroyed by any means, you can special summon any Crystron monster from your deck. So it's a very good means of setting up the graveyard by discarding a Crystron, as well as making sure you have a monster on the board, because even if it doesn't stay, you have another one. And now, with the other Crystron non-tuners, they all have a similar effect, where you can destroy one card you control, and then special summon a Crystron tuner from your deck. And they all have a secondary effect that works when they're in the graveyard. But the thing is, you don't really want to do the, destroy a card special summon tuner from the deck that often, because if you do that, you can only special summon Synchro machine monsters this turn. Which is a big restriction given that you can't make any links. So it's best to use the graveyard effect instead, and also you can only use one of the effects that turn, because it's only one per turn, once per turn. So yeah, a very hard once per turn. But getting into the specific effect of Rosenix, you can banish it from the graveyard to get a level 1 water machine tuner on the field. Not tuner, token. So it can get you a machine token, which is useful for making link plays. Then we got Thyspun, which is a level 3, 15 on attack and defense. And you can banish this one from the graveyard in order to add any Crystron monster from your deck to your hand, except for another copy of itself. So very good for consistency. And very useful for searching out Sylphifneel. Then we got the other level 3 non-tuner, that being Smiggle. Smiggle, you can banish from your graveyard to add a Crystron spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. So, Thyspun does monsters, Smiggle does spell and traps. Fairly simple. Oh, and one thing I want to bring up is, at least with these, they don't have the except the turn this was sent to the graveyard. You can use it the same turn they were sent to the graveyard. And next up we got the 1 copy of Steam Synchron. This water machine level 3 has the effect that during your opponent's main phase, you can immediately, after this card effect resolves, Synchro summon using any cards you control. So this is a lot more free than the actual Crystron tuners, as they make so you can only use 2 monsters for the summon. And also, this one doesn't restrict you to machine monsters. And we're going to get to a good play you can make with this later on. Next up, we got Crystron Rion. This level 3 tuner has the effect that you can target a banished non-tuner monster and special summon it. You then have to immediately do a Synchro summon using only those 2 monsters. At which point, both of them are shuffled back into the deck. Very interesting mechanic. And as far as them getting banished, Citri sets up for that perfectly. So Citri is a level 2 tuner, and it targets one non-tuner monster in your graveyard, special summons it, and immediately does a Synchro summon with those 2 monsters. But both cards used are banished. Next up, we got 3 copies of Parzotto. So with this one, it's a level 2 non-tunal machine. And again, with the other non-tunals, the effect is that you can destroy a card you control, especially a Crystron tunal from your deck. But you can only summon machine Synchros for the rest of the turn. But the graveyard effect is you can spaz it, special a Crystalline monster from your hand. Again, very good for getting cards on the field. And then, rounding up our tunals, we've got Crystron Quan. So, Quan lets you special a Crystron monster. No, just a non-tunal monster from your hand. Its effects are negated like the other ones, and you have to immediately do a Synchro summon. At which point, it just goes to the graveyard. Yeah, kind of a typical one. And it uses your hand, so that's why I'm winning less of that than the other ones. And now we get into the big part of this. Because the entire focus is especially on your, Synchro summoning on your opponent's turn. Ties of the Brethren's restriction of not being able to summon for this turn is not a restriction. And here's the thing. It just they have different names, the same level, same type, same attribute. At which point we look back and realize that Weon, Steam Synchron, Smigel, and Thyspun are all level 3 water machines. Meaning it's perfect. So yes, pay 2,000, get 3, a combination of 3, either 2 tunals, 1 non-tunal, or 2 non-tunals and 1 tunal, depending on what you need to go for. We'll get into the extract as to the possibilities of that. Next up, we got Terraforming to search out the field trail we'll go over later. 1 monster born for recovery or yes, extending place. Foolish Burial, so you can use the graveyard effects more effectively. Then, here's another card I'm using to try and speed up getting monsters on the field. Different Dimension Deep Sea Trench. With this one, upon activation, you can bash 1 water monster from your hand, graveyard, or face up on the field. Your most likely is going to go with hand or graveyard. And if this card is destroyed, you can special on that banished monster. So the idea is you use this, banish a water monster, at which point you use the effect of Self-Fifth Nail. Once it's summoned, you can now destroy this on the field, which will bring back the monster you banished, which is a decent way of getting multiple monsters on the field without relying on a normal summon. And because both Citri and another one we're going to get to later do a lot of banishing, part of Aggressiveness, suffer 3 banished monsters back into the deck, then draw 1. And here's the field spell, Starlight Junction. The first effect I don't really use that much. It just tribute a tunal, especially on a Synchron monster from your deck with a different level from the tribute monster, which is a problem because if you go with Leon, it's not going to work because the only Synchron we're running is the level 3. So it's just with Kron or Citri that'll work. The important thing is the secondary effect. On your opponent's turn, if you Synchro summon, you can target 1 card on the field, suffer back into the deck. So basically, whenever you do what this deck is supposed to do, you get to spin 1 card your opponent controls back into the deck, which can be really good. On to the trap cards, we've got Crystron Entry. This one lets you special on 2 Synchron. I keep on messing that up. Crystron tuners, 1 from your hand and 1 from your graveyard. Fairly simple, and if you do it on your opponent's turn and have a Link on the field, it's going to go great because then you can have Citri and Leon on the field. Citri is going to special 1, banish for the Synchro summon, at which point you can use that banished one with Weehorn, so you can get 2 Synchro monsters on your opponent's turn. Very good. And on to the graveyard effect. Yeah, unlike the monsters, these have the accept the turn it was sent to the graveyard effect. So there's a delay on the traps. So, let's see, you can banish this card from your graveyard, target 1 Crystalline monster you control, and send 1 Crystalline monster from your deck to the graveyard who has a different level. The targeted Crystron now has the level of the sent Crystron. Just a small little amount of level manipulation. But the more important trap card is Crystron Impact. You can target one of your banished Crystron monsters, special it, and if you do, all your opponent's face-up monsters have their defense turned to 0. That last part seems out of nowhere. I don't see an actual benefit of it. But the point is, you can either special a banished one, which can let you continue plays or do plays on your opponent's turn. Because if you go with a tunnel, it's going to work perfectly. And on to the secondary effect. Except for the turn this was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this from the graveyard if your opponent would use a card effect to target a Crystron monster you control. So banish to stop a targeting, which can be very useful. Then on to the extra deck, we won 2 copies of Mist Starboy because well, everything's water. It gives a decent stat boost. And also, if this is destroyed, you can just return any of the water monsters from your grave back to your hand, allowing you to get more uses out of cards like the tunnels. Or even Steam Synchron, that would work. And now, because we still don't have Needle Fiber, Platinum Gadget seems like the best bet. Just takes 2 machines, the entire deck is machine. And you can get a special on 1 level 4 lower machine monster from your hand. And the effect isn't even negated. So it's actually very useful in that regard. You get a Link 2 with good arrows, and you can get most likely, a tuner on the field, which can allow you to make plays on your opponent's turn. On to the Synchros. First off, we got the Synchro tuner, that being Kondax. Kondax is a level 4, and during your opponent's main phase or battle phase, like the other tuners, you can, immediately after this effect resolves, Synchro summon 1 Synchro monster using cards you control. This one at least lets you use modal ones to summon it. And doesn't have the machine Synchro restriction. And if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target a non-Synchro Crystron in your graveyard, special summon it. Nice bit of floating. Then you got a high-speed Void Chanbara. Fairly well known. It's a Sync 5. Whenever it battles, it gains 2 on attack, and it can attack twice each battle phase. Catastor, equally well known. It's just useful against anything that isn't dark. It just provides immediate destruction, and stats aren't too bad, I suppose. Then we got Amatrix. So Amatrix is a Sync 5. If this card is Synchro Summon, you can change all face-up special summoned monsters your opponent controls. Switch all of them to defense position. And if this Synchro Summon monster would be destroyed, you can target a Crystalline monster in your graveyard that isn't a Synchro, special summon it. Yeah, pretty much all of these have the same floating. Powered Injectron is the Sync 6, because again, you're locked into machines. Most of the time, that is. And when this card is Synchro Summoned, for this turn, this cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, and you take no damage. Which is very good on your opponent's turn. Samurai Destroyer, which is a Sync 7 with an upgraded Ancient Gear effect. Not only can your opponent not activate cards or effects during the battle phase, but the monster this card is attacking has its effects negated. And if this leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can special summon any machine monster from your graveyard, which is really good. And next we got Tristler, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. The way you summon this is you use Tyler Brethren to bring out, let's see, where was that one? Yeah, Steam Synchron, as well as Smigel and Thicefun. So you have a 3, a 3, and a 3. One of them is a tunnel. And Steam Synchron, as I mentioned before, does not have the machine restriction on it. So you can just summon this on your opponent's turn. And if you have Starlight Junction on the field, it's even better, because banish 3 of your opponent's cards, then spin a card back into the deck. How's that for advantage? And here's the other card that does a lot of banishing. So, Vermilion Dragon Mech is another Sync 9. It's actually... Sync 9 is actually the easiest one to do in this deck, it seems like. So, once per turn, you can banish 1 tuner monster from your hand, field, or grave. Then target and destroy 1 card on the field. Yeah. Very simple, and you have a good amount of tuners that you can use as photo for this, and like I said, banishes, so it can make that part of acquisitiveness more useful. And also, if this Synchro Summon card is destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can target one of your banished tuners, return it to your hand. Decent recovery. Next we got Crystron Phoenix. This takes a tuner Synchro as well as a regular Synchro. So the best option is, because it's a Sync 9 again, you use Kondax and any of the 3 different Sync 5s. So on to the effect of Phoenix. If this card is Synchro Summon, you can banish all spell and trap cards your opponent controls and in their graveyard. That's fairly useful. And let's see, if this Synchro Summon card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target one other monster in your graveyard, special summon it. So less limited than the other Crystron Synchro's floating effects. Because this one can revive a Synchro. Actually, it doesn't even have to... Yeah, it doesn't have to be a Crystron. And now, on to the big boss monster of this. No, I don't know how to pronounce its name. So this one takes 2 or more tuners plus 1 non-tuner monster. And if this card is Synchro Summon, you can target monsters your opponent controls and or in their graveyard up to the number of single materials used. Due to Tyler Brethren, it's mostly going to be 3. Because you're going to use Rion, Steam Synchron, and a non-tuner, that being either Thicefun or Smigel. Now, getting back into the effect, you banish those targeted cards. And if this Synchro Summon monster is destroyed by battle or card effect, similar to the previous one, but this one is even better. You can just target one banished monster, except this card, special to your field. It just says banished, doesn't say you're banished. So you can, let's say you banish the opponent's boss monster that doesn't have a summoning restriction. You can, if this gets destroyed, take your opponent's monster that you got rid of. That's actually a very effective means, and I like the amount of boss monsters this deck can use. And here's just some quick cards that I've considered using. So, Tuner's High. I thought it was a good idea, but then I realized that it has to be a tuner that's a higher level than the one that you discarded. And most of the deck is level 3, and you don't have a level 4 tuner, so it's not that useful. hence why I went with Deep Sea Trench instead. Iron Jaw, this I'm debating because I think it might be really good. Because you're not that reliant on specializing on your turn. In case you're not familiar with it, it's just if you control exactly 2 machine effect monsters and no other monsters, draw 2 cards. But for this turn, you can only perform 1 special summon. I think that could work. Especially given how if you make Platinum Gadget and then special one from your hand, you don't really need to do any other special ones that turn, and you got exactly 2 machine effect monsters. Another one is Supply Squad, which I debated for a while. I think I did one for a while, but I decided against it because most of the time you're not really gaining that much from destroying your own cards, because all of them except for Sylphefnil are going to lock you into machine Synchros. And also, it's just not as focused on self-destruction as, say, Scrap. And finally, we got More Way of Greed, which might work. Might, like if you don't get Sylphefnil, but you do get some of the other Crystron monsters, you can get stuff of them back into the deck. Draw 3. So it even replaces itself, so it's very even. I think that might be a good idea, but yeah, that's just some ideas I have, but I'm not too sure about. But yeah, that's my Crystron deck. Thanks for watching.